X-Men Dark Phoenix is the final installment in Fox's X-Men universe that has lasted 19 years, although it won't be the last time that we do see the X-Men because Disney and Marvel Studios will be rebooting the X-Men into the MCU in the next few years. Longtime X-Men writer and producer Simon Kinberg makes his directorial debut with this film, adapting the beloved Dark Phoenix saga from the X-Men comics, where Jean Grey absorbs the cosmic Phoenix Force and is corrupted over time into becoming the powerful villain Dark Phoenix. This is not the first time Kinberg has adapted the Dark Phoenix saga, having written the story into the less than stellar X-Men The Last Stand. Now, prior to the Disney and Fox deal, this movie was meant to kick off another X-Men trilogy that would focus on the younger mutants introduced in X-Men Apocalypse, including Sophie Turner's Jean Grey. But since the Fox deal and the news of the X-Men being rebooted, Dark Phoenix has now been repurposed as the culmination of the entire Fox series that started in 2000. The film underwent some reshoots to redo the entire third act, now acting as more of a closed book, where there isn't even a post-credit scene this time. Now, I grew up watching the original X-Men movies with Hugh Jackman, and many movie producers, including Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios, will tell you how important the original X-Men film was in kickstarting Hollywood's obsession with superheroes. In fact, we probably wouldn't have the MCU if it weren't for that first X-Men movie. A number of the X-Men movies are some of the best of the superhero genre, from X-Men 2, X-Men Days of Future Past, and even Logan, which many people consider one of the best superhero movies ever made. The Fox Marvel movies have done more good than some fans give them credit for. I mean, we have Fox to thank for Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool at least. But not every movie that Fox has put out has worked, and I would say Dark Phoenix is a step above what we saw in X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men Apocalypse, and certainly X-Men Origins Wolverine. It definitely isn't the train wreck a lot of people online are making it out to be. It still winds up being a bit of a disappointment where it just feels aggressively average. And after seeing Dark Phoenix, I'm looking forward to some new creative voices taking control of the X-Men universe and breathing some new life into the property, as Dark Phoenix feels like a group of people trying to say they want to move on. My main issue with Dark Phoenix comes down to Kinberg's direction and script. I'm sure he originally wanted to carry the story over into other movies, but the finished product comes across as the Cliff Notes version of the Dark Phoenix story. Everything has been condensed, primarily focused on a moody take on the Jean Grey story. We have Jean absorbing the Phoenix Force in space, even though X-Men Apocalypse had already teased that she had those powers, while Jessica Chastain plays an alien who tries to corrupt Jean. All of this kind of gets wrapped up quite abruptly, and ultimately feels rushed and underdeveloped. The acting across the board is pretty great, and I found myself getting most of my enjoyment from the film in seeing this cast get to be these characters one last time. Sophie Turner does a fine job as Jean Grey. The script has her either being upset or throwing her arms around using her powers. In quieter moments, we get to see Sophie shine a bit more, but the writing definitely fails her, as she spits out a lot of generic jargon. McAvoy is a great Professor X, even as his voice and mannerisms in this movie are starting to mimic Patrick Stewart a bit more, while Fassbender, to me, is an excellent Magneto. They bring a lot to characters who aren't given a whole lot to do in this film. Professor X has an arc where he's seemingly becoming self-obsessed, with a number of characters confronting him about his ego, which all felt a little forced to me. Nothing Professor X does in the film really felt like it warranted the responses that he gets, while Magneto is kind of just there. He's in hiding once again like in Apocalypse, and gets called to help the X-Men find Jean. Honestly, in my mind, you could have kept Magneto completely out of this film and have it be a more personal film with the central X-Men. Cyclops gets to drop an F-bomb, which is kind of fun. The movie tries to spend some time on his relationship with Jean, but it's clear Sheridan and Sophie Turner don't quite have that chemistry with each other. James Marsden and Famke Janssen definitely had a bit more between each other in the original trilogy. Jessica Chastain does what she can as a deep-cut Marvel villain. She's fairly underwritten and feels more like a nuisance rather than a real threat. It's mainly generic villain monologuing that we get from Chastain. And believe me, if it wasn't her in the role, the character would feel like it was from the Josh Trank Fantastic Four film. The CG for the aliens is pretty lackluster as well, considering we had some similar enemies in another comic book movie with similar abilities. It's also really bizarre that the X-Men have no real reactions to the aliens they're fighting. No one's really shocked that the villains are aliens, even though this is the first time these characters have ever encountered aliens. But no one is more checked out of this movie than Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, who in every scene looks like she'd rather be anywhere else but in an X-Men film. She isn't in the movie much, but it's hard to get invested and care about what happens to Mystique in the film when the person playing her clearly doesn't care. The movie doesn't really have any exciting action scenes either. Quicksilver has a few fun moments, but they're not as well shot or put together as the Quicksilver moments in the Bryan Singer films. The sequence on the train is probably the most exciting set piece in the film, which happens to be part of the reshoots. There's just not a lot of energy to the film, and it's fine if the movie wants to take a moodier approach and focus on the melodrama, but if that's the case, you probably shouldn't have picked the Dark Phoenix saga to adapt. The source material needs someone willing to accept and explore the cosmic elements of the story. Kinberg seems like he's scared to embrace that side of the X-Men, that it might be too silly, and instead went for a more grounded film. But even then, a lot of the grounded dialogue and moments feel rudimentary, because a first-time director is shooting these scenes. The thing is, we've seen the MCU handle cosmic stories in a realistic way quite well, so it seems bizarre that those cosmic elements feel pushed to the side in Dark Phoenix. I think you really needed a more experienced director handling this film. Great that Kinberg wanted to direct, and of course he's been a part of this franchise for years, but it's clear watching this that he needed to cut his teeth on a smaller film first, before doing a big blockbuster. You can't hand a first-time director a $150 million plus budget tentpole blockbuster, and I hope this is a lesson to the other studios not to hand big movies to new directors. At least I can say that Hans Zimmer's score is fantastic. It's nice hearing him work on a superhero movie again. His music elevates a few scenes to an enjoyable level. It's nowhere near as intense as his Zack Snyder scores, but fans of his music will enjoy the score quite a bit. Simon Kinberg delivers a perfectly average adaptation of the Dark Phoenix saga. I wish a more experienced director had taken the helm and created some more exciting character moments and action scenes. Someone with a more focused vision could have given this film a bit more energy. Dark Phoenix is watchable for the most part, but once the 2 hours are over, you're not going to feel particularly moved or motivated to seek out the source material. It sucks seeing this 19-year-old franchise, which I grew up loving, come to a pretty disappointing end. If you're not interested in seeing how this franchise ends, I'd say stay at home and watch Days of Future Past again. At least that movie has Hugh Jackman in it. Otherwise, if you are interested, maybe catch it on a cheaper Tuesday to see these characters again before Disney and Marvel start over from scratch. Dark Phoenix is far from being one of the worst films of the year. I'd much rather watch this than Hellboy. Some people I know who are big X-Men fans have come away really enjoying this film, so you may end up liking Dark Phoenix more than I did. But for me, I just wish this franchise had gone out on a higher note, with a bit more effort put into the world and characters that we've really grown to love over the years. Until the next time, Jean Grey, X-Men Dark Phoenix gets a 5.5 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you liked this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye guys.